How do we work with this thing we call a nervous system without stressing it out and getting so tight and tense that our whole experience is a big ball of stress? That's a question I've been asking myself ever since I became a teenager. And I kind of wish that the nervous system was something that other adults who have trained their nervous system gave us a manual so that we could learn how to drive it. All right, it's like having a high performance machine, but I have no idea which knobs to turn. Think about getting into an airplane for the very first time, sitting in the cockpit, and somebody saying, okay, now I need you to fly this huge hunk of metal, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it, and you're responsible for all of the other lives, including your own, on this plane. It's scary. That would be overwhelming. And that's sort of what it's like to operate our nervous systems. And I don't know if you're anything like me. I've experienced stress, anxiety, overwhelm, doubt, fear in such an outrageous capacity since I became an adult. And there were very few people who've actually led me in learning how to navigate this machine. One of the things that I came across recently was a modality called self-compassion. Mindful self-compassion. And this was introduced to me by a couple of my friends who've done this work. And essentially, it's a system for being more kind to our nervous system by first understanding what's going on. And there's this brilliant tool that they use called red light, green light, yellow light. And this is a system for looking at the spectrum of stress and strain that we put on our nervous systems. For the longest time, I have been terrified of getting soft, of being lazy, unmotivated, unproductive, which means I've leaned towards the red light end of the spectrum. Red light is I'm constantly putting my foot pedal to the metal. I'm constantly leaning on the gas because I'm terrified that if I let up at all, I'm going to get lazy and become unproductive. The other side of that spectrum in the green light is being a little more carefree, unstructured. It's okay if I just go with the flow. I'm not going to put any stress or timelines on myself. I'm just going to be gentle with myself. That end of the spectrum terrifies me. I don't know where you lie on the red light to green light spectrum, but the reality is that both ends of that spectrum have something that's really powerful for us to learn, something powerful for us to lean into. And also inherently that none of these zones are inherently good or bad. They just are. And the yellow light zone is where the most opportunity for growth is. I'm not quite comfortable, so I'm not quite in my green zone. I'm not comfortable with the circumstances around me, with the level of edge I'm leaning into, but I'm also not pushing myself into this tense, overwhelmed, contracted state of my nervous system. The red lighters out there need to lean a little bit more towards green in order to land in that ideal yellow zone. And sometimes we need to go all the way to the green zone, just give ourselves a break. Say, hey, I'm just going to give myself a day or 2 days or 3 days to just listen to my body and give my body what it wants. It wants to take a nap, go for it. Wants to watch a couple movies on Netflix, go for it. Be gentle, be relaxed, soften. It's so much medicine for me in leaning towards that green light end of the spectrum, even though it's been uncomfortable. Because again, it goes against all of my red light tendencies, but it's taught me that I can go into that green zone without completely compromising my whole life and my whole vision. That's the story I tell myself to stay in the red light zone. And for the green zoners out there, putting a little more challenge on your plate, leaning into that edge, declaring some strong commitments, putting some timelines and timetables on yourself, creating accountability by telling people what you're up to, that's going to move that needle from the green light end of the spectrum closer to the red. And that ideal zone for growth, again, is that yellow light in the middle. I'm not quite comfortable, but I'm also not stressing and straining my nervous system so that I'm tweaking and freaking out. And this is what happened to me just a few months ago. Was I was so anchored in my red light zone, and I was so resistant to softening and allowing things to be a little more easeful at times for myself that I was waking up at 3:00 in the morning with my heart pounding out of my chest. I was anxious. I literally wanted to rip my skin off because I was so uncomfortable in my day-to-day experience. And it was clear that the red light wasn't working out for me anymore. So a buddy of mine named Jack Rubin, who's been on the podcast here before, he invited me to look at how I'm treating myself and look at the dialogue that I'm having with myself and really inquire, what am I telling myself to reinforce staying in this red light zone without making it good, without making it bad, right, wrong, this or that. Just asking, why stay in the red light? And so much of that story was I was afraid that if I took my foot off the gas, I was going to fail myself. I was going to fail my family. I was going to fail the whole Rising Man community. And it was amazing to look at how big these stories got, all in service to staying in this red light, contracted, tense state. And then I looked at, well, what was the cost of staying in that red light zone? Man, the number one, just the feelings I had for myself. and then how I felt about myself and uncomfortable in my body, and how that was impacting my family, my children, everyone around me. And I was like, wow, what would it look like if I leaned a little bit more into the green zone or found a nice middle ground in the yellow? And that's been big work for me. And so I invite you guys to think about this. Where do you tend to orient yourself on the light spectrum? Are you more of a green zoner where you stay comfortable, you don't put too much challenge on your plate, you don't make too firm of commitments or timelines for yourself? Are you more in that yellow zone where you're not stressing yourself out to the point of overwhelm, but you're not exactly comfortable or playing it safe either? Or are you in that red light zone where you're constantly leaning into your edge, constantly maxing out your nervous system, putting yourself into fight, flight, or freeze mode over and over again? And where would you like to be? It's a really important point of inquiry. And then to go a little bit deeper, why? Why do I find myself in that green zone? What am I afraid of? What am I avoiding? What beliefs do I have about myself? Why do I tend to veer into this red light zone? What do I fear is going to be the outcome? What do I think is going to happen to me? What's it going to mean about me if I lean a little bit out of that red light zone? Inquire, ask these questions about yourself, and approach it from this compassionate place of curiosity, wanting to understand yourself a little bit better, just the same as you would want to understand somebody else objectively who is talking themselves through this situation. But to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself these questions and really look at objectively, what is going on here? Is this aligned with how I want to be? And where would I like for it to be if it's not? Important questions to ask yourself. Make sure you share this with somebody else who you see clearly is a red lighter or a green lighter and could benefit from considering a middle ground for themselves. And make sure you guys tune in each and every week when we drop another Monday morning meditation. Peace, love, and blessings to all of you.